Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have Professor Pixel. We are discussing the Denzel Washington movie, Deja Vu from 2006, a sci-fi thriller slash romance. I would not call this an action film, Pixel, and unfortunately, if people go in there thinking there's going to be a lot of action because it's a over 2 hour long film, they're going to be disappointing. But that being said, I think this is a very fun film. It's very interesting. Yes, it has time travel in it, which always sucks, but I think they do an admirable effort of trying to explain it to the audience so it makes sense. I love how there's a lot of little things put in there that you miss at first until you go back and you watch it and like, oh, damn it. And yes, we're going to bring up Jesus, a.k.a. Jim Caviezel, blowing up people and all that because he steals a lot of scenes that he's in, even though he's not in here. He's the nameless, the faceless. And just like that, Denzel cries, people die, and Jesus drops a bomb. I think this is a great film, and it's a lot of fun. What's your initial take?
Time
Stop.
is on my side. Wait, sorry. Wrong
Denzel.
film. Though it is funny, I couldn't help but think of that when you see young Denzel and you have the subject of time going around. The song does come in. I don't know if we talked about this already, Ed Brewer. I definitely haven't. This was my first time seeing it, and I thought it was an excellent film. I don't remember when, but months ago we had a conversation about films involving time travel. And if I were to make another list, if we were to have another conversation, this would definitely come up because I think it's a brilliant execution of what they're going for. And it touches on subjects that you've talked about before when we've talked about things involving time travel. And I really loved this movie.
That's why I picked it up for you.
RDV, what's going on, man?
Not much.
I'm on this film.
Sorry, I'm late. I'm used to you sending me links as soon as we're about to go live, so I forgot you already sent it.
No worries. Figured you were hopping in, but yeah, we had talked about Denzel because the stuff was so good, and so I'm glad we picked this movie. So I'm assuming you liked it, but tell us your initial thoughts.
This is my first time actually watching all the way through. I've always caught it on cable at the very end, so I had no idea what it was.
Okay.
This is before the guides. Yeah, this is a fantastic movie. Jim Caviezel as the bad guy. It's great.
He is, and unfortunately, I think when you look on Twitter today, there's a certain element that wants to point out his personal, religious, political beliefs and all that too, and they want to say a lot of negative things about him in that manner. I choose to kind of ignore that because it is what it is, and we could talk about that with almost any actor today. But you're right, Jim Caviezel, I would say, we call it charisma, but he has a presence. He'd already played in The Passion of the Christ, obviously, which a lot of people get upset about, but it was a wildly successful film. He'd been in a great movie, The Count of Monte Cristo, too, and Frequency, and several others. And he's a good-looking man, just like Denzel. So there's not a beefcake in this film, but not from the that kind of side too. And Val Kilmer's very strong in here as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I forgot Val Kilmer's in there too. I was like, wow. Now you know it's an old movie. Val Kilmer's in it.
Well, I will say this. I agree with both you guys. I think it's an exceptional film. It's long. It can almost be a bit tedious. I don't mind that because it has a dreamy quality to it. And as we dive in, I'll mention that. Here's my one big negative if I was going to go down this path. And it has nothing to do with the time travel aspect. I could argue very easily that Deja Vu is a very pro-big government movie. Why? Because the government agents in here, which I think it's done effectively, specifically Val Kilmer and his whole crew, they're actually warm and personal and friendly. And the government somehow accidentally discovered something that we'll talk about here shortly that allowed them to travel back in time briefly, or at least certain things. And they're doing a very positive thing with it. But people, if you put this in context with what was going on in 2006, you already had a couple different bombings here in the United States. And then you had, of course, in 2001, you had 9/11. And then shortly after that, the Patriot Act, which greatly restricted basically everything going on in the United States, or at least that was already going on already that people didn't know about. It was certainly made public. And so to this day, you see that the old statement is true, that the bigger government gets, the worse it is in terms of quality and everything else there too, because you put Denzel in the government uniform like he is here as an ATF agent, and he's so good you're like, wow, the government must have paid Scott and everybody a lot of money for this movie, because it's this probably the biggest pro-government type movie you could have. And I choose to ignore that because that's not what it's about. But damn, one could argue that really easily.
Well, one could also argue you could take any movie idea, good or bad, put Denzel as a lead, it soars box office.
That's my point, and that's
Yeah.
because of how strong Denzel is. But this has a great supporting cast.
True.
It's a really great film. So the whole idea here is that we get a great little setup at the beginning. We see a bunch of is it a false flag operation for you conspiracy theorists out there? I don't know, but you get it's in New Orleans, a year after Katrina. You see where you have a terrorist attack. Basically, a bomb blows up, and it's a great little setup, a nice little introduction, because you're just watching everyday normal things. You're not watching a specific person. So I've talked about before how characters mean a great deal, and if you can identify with them or root for them, it really draws you. And here you're seeing stuff that everybody, whether you're old, young, fat, skinny, bald, whatever, it doesn't matter. Life things, people getting on a boat crossing a river and it blows up, and it's a pretty damn good explosion too. It's graphic, it's intense. And then we get Denzel, the man on the scene. You're like, okay, this guy's going to be the hero, maybe, because that's the thing about Denzel. You're totally right. You all just want to root for him because he's that friggin' likable. He's that damn good, and I hate him for being that good, but I don't really hate him because it's.
What also helps is that this movie feels like it's straight out of the '90s, and the reason I say it because this is a 2006 film. That means that wow, they were actually still doing good films up to 2006. This is 16 years old.
Yeah.
Val Kilmer doesn't really steal the show at all, but he's noticeable in there. But he almost plays it. I like that he's a side character because up until then, remember, he was always like a main character. But when he's going back and watching it, it's like I don't really recognize Val. I have to look at him like, oh, that is him.
Yes.
Obviously, he's put on some weight since his last role, whatever he had. But he's not primarily using this. He's used for a means to the end. They get him into the secret bunker where they have the machine and all that stuff of this. Now, this is where the movie kind of gets sci-fi, and it kind of gets kind of like hokey for me because I'd watch shows up to this about time travel. 7 Days was another one through UPN. We've also had Time Cop, where they actually send people back in time.
The greatest Van Damme movie of all time.
It is. So I love this more because they show how they're like, yeah, we stumbled this by accident, because if time travel ever was, or even it was even discovered, it would be by accident because we don't have anybody here that actually is more than 2 brain cells and that's currently in school. But
I would disagree with
our generation's doomed.
It's. I think this film does a very good job of explaining to you what's happening, because we don't know this till a big chunk of the investigation is going on, and we see Denzel, who's a smart ATF agent, basically saying, "Well, hey, how did you get all the video?" And they explain it with satellite technology. And right now, you're having this what some people call a fourth industrial revolution or whatever for software as a space service. With all these satellite companies out there that have just all SPACed if you're into investments, Spire, Planet Labs, Black Sky, a lot of them having to do with big tech and data that use real-time data. And so your Google Maps, Bing, everything that you use come from this. These things have already been in use for, since the 60s, let's say. So it's just a newer and better version of it. And due to them using it, as Val Kilmer explains, they accidentally discovered that they were able to kind of pick up it. And they do a great job of explaining to the average viewer, and when I say average viewer, I mean person who doesn't know anything about science at all, watching it, which is most of us, what goes on. And Val Kilmer, he says basically, he goes, if you think about it, everything we see is already in the past, because light takes time to travel. Like from the sun, it's 6-8 minutes, to get here. He goes, we were just able to see it up to 4 days earlier. So there were certain things that Denzel, when he was investigating this beautiful young woman, you can tell he's starting to snivel and cry a little bit and tear up and break your heart, make you go, because he's fallen in love with her, which is weird and creepy.
I gotta say though, I love what you're talking about, and adding on to that, the whole Denzel Washington, he's basically like, quit talking science, explain to me, is this person alive back then? He's like, yes, it's the past. This is also
so
their
clear
present.
they were trying to do that for the scene, and then they explain about how space and time unfolds and lines, and they actually show it, and it's done very well. Where you go, oh, that's what's going on in Back to the Future and everything else there too. So,
Mhm.
Pixel, let me bring this up. Part of the whole reason the Xtreme Movie Show exists is to educate young people like yourself, 20-something millennials that aren't even of drinking age, into understanding what good movies are. And if we were to ever extend this into music, we would introduce you to 80s music and what was good, and go into the 70s, and we would not go forward into the 90s very much. So Denzel Washington, we're hoping you're enjoying him so far. But for this, had you seen this movie before?
No. This one, it's first time I've seen it.
It
When
doesn't
we
feel
reviewed
familiar.
Fallen, that was my second time seeing that movie. I've seen Denzel and other things before. And if you don't think I'm drinking age, you should have seen me 2 nights ago. But anyway.
Wine spritzers don't count, sir.
This film...
Non-alcoholic alcohol, right?
Go ahead.
When we're talking about how he's able to carry himself in this film, I really love how it's able to handle him. He's able to handle himself, and it's just like with Fallen, how that's also a movie that's pretty much panned when it comes to reviewers. That this one is right on that scale as well. It has these interesting concepts put into it, and you have somebody as the leading man like Denzel Washington. It shouldn't fail, but yet some people, it just doesn't click with them, and I can't understand it because I'm loving just the discussion of it. You have 4 days and 6 hours to look into the past, and they're able to they find out later on they're able to leave a note, and that note ends up leading to his partner, who he thought died in the boat, actually dying hours before. And it works out in a way where you're questioning, wait a minute, did this already happen, or did they change it? And they have the conversation themselves. They say, well, that's one theory throughout this film, and that's absolutely a great way to go about it.
Well, from the detective point of view, to add on to that, a lot of times when you see shots, you know that it's being clearly framed, so you can see Michael Myers coming out of the back, or you're looking over somebody's shoulder to see what they're seeing, or little things like that. You know something's going to happen. If you're somebody like, I always bring up John Carpenter, you have a lot of what I would call still shots, where the camera's still, and then you see like the people moving across the screen, and that's it. And so there's a lot of different ways you can capture what it is you're trying to portray to your audience. And sometimes you have the if I sit here and point to something in my hand, and then you see somebody pointing and their fingers under the words or whatever in the book or a clue, you're like, okay, that's really blatantly obvious. However, in here, you just see Denzel, who, as he's investigating, you can tell he's pretty smart. He finds some plastic explosive residue on the ground, and he ultimately, gets called in to take a look at a body that had washed up. And he'd gotten a piece of information. I'm trying not to say too much in case people haven't seen it, but I'm saying some of the stuff that's significant to pay attention to. He'd gotten a phone call that he was able to call back yet. So somebody was calling in tips apparently for the bombing. And again, it's over 500 people. This is a major event. And he's having this female that's dead, that has a burn, that she was in the bomb. She had her fingers literally chopped off, and he's examining her. And I gotta say this, I thought this scene was cool, the autopsy scene, because you can tell he's looking at her going, man, she's pretty hot. And let's be honest, as guys, we're going to be looking at that because she's the chick from Mission Impossible 3 or 4, I think Ghost Protocol. So she's been in a few things too, but she's very beautiful, natural, beautiful woman. And Denzel's looking at this woman, and the score really through this whole movie is a little bit of science fiction sounds, but it's almost like a sad piano kind of thing, and it's nonstop. It really adds to it. But Denzel's looking at her, and it's not like they used a prop. I believe this was the actual actress laying there, because when he turns her head over to look at it, you're looking at it going, yeah, that's just a real actress there. She's doing a good job of not breathing or whatever. They froze the frame or whatever. And it looks so real. You can almost believe Denzel, because he gets that little in his right eye, that little almost half tear where it doesn't come out and you don't see it at the edge, but you see his eye starting to fill up, and you're like, damn it, you're good, Denzel. Stop doing that to me. It gets me every time. And later on, some of the stuff we see during the course of the investigation, that he's just rummaging around in her apartment and other places, we go back, and it's not the Sherlock Holmesian, well, let me just show you scenes that were already filmed and piece it together with a voiceover narrative. It's a, oh, that's what happened, or that's what makes sense. And it's such a good detective part to it that you're going, wait a minute. It starts off as an action piece, kind of sort of with the explosion, goes into detective mode, goes into romance, tries to do action, but I think it fails because the car chase scene is boring. It's just sort of there, but it's just, it does bounce around and it takes its time getting there. But when it does, you're like, oh, damn it, that made the first part of it even better. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. I think where Denzel's in the truck and then trying to also look in the goggle thing, but also driving at the time, he's driving against traffic. I thought that was pretty good. Now, he should have been dead when the semi truck hit him. But
Yeah.
other than that, though, I thought it was very suspenseful, and it kept me in tie with the movie. The pace and stuff going on, because he's trying to prevent a murder that happened 4 days ago while it's happening.
So basically, the idea here at this point in the film is that, yes, they're trying to find all these images and have every possible camera angle of what's going on within a certain radius of near downtown New Orleans. And on this boat where it was at, they can go out so far. And he's like, well, we can't really find anything right now, but we've got some information from her. If we follow her as a lead, I think we'll find the bomber. And what's great is the scenes where the special task force, he ends up being invited to, and they explain things to him, but not all at once, in certain stages. They have a moment here or two of the conversation that you feel like these are good people that are working really, really hard, and they generally like each other for who they are, and they're not the hotshot young group on the science fiction channel 1990s TV show or something like that. They're just people that work well together, and you can feel the stress of what they're going through for this event, and they're really trying to do their duty. And it's such an alien concept that the government, like I say, or these types of people are good people. It's offsetting. And you could see Denzel as the everyman, and they're asking the exact same questions we would ask. Well, hey, wait a minute. If you got the video, tell me how you got the audio. Because they travel at different speeds, so they're not going to sync up. And they just don't answer them. And they don't bullshit him either. So there's little things like that you can see him catching up on, and then finally he realizes what's going on. And he's able to use that HUD device that you were saying there, RDV driving, because they get a lead on a man's voice that he suspects would be the bomber. And when this person's going out of range, as long as he drives within range, they can use that suit to kind of, it's like a range extender, if you will. Like, it's like if you're getting out of cell phone range and had something like it, or if you're into ham radio and all that, you can get something that will extend the range. And so that's the action scene or whatever. But let's pivot here and let's talk about Jesus here, Jim Caviezel. I've had people tell me over the years to see Frequency. It's a movie I've never seen. They say it's a really great, heartwarming story about a father and a son or something. Never saw it. Didn't know who he was. I have seen Passion of the Christ. It's one of the most intense films I've ever seen. I'll just leave it at that. But I absolutely love the Count of Monte Cristo from 2003 that he's in, and a few other people. And I wish more swashbuckling adventure movies would be made like that people can watch based off of old stuff that's got young adult juvenile stuff in it, but adult level stuff. It's great film, and he's in it. I like Person of Interest, and I binged it. I don't normally watch a lot of television, but he's in it. People have told me that he's great. He's hunky. He played collegiate level sports. He's obviously a very passionate individual. Some people say no, he's just a mouthpiece and he's a one-dimensional whatever. But what little screen time he has in here, and he's the bad guy, he's very friggin' sinister. I mean, he creeps me out in here. So in other words, he does his job fantastically. What do you guys think?
Well, he plays a perfect crazy guy. Like he's on a holy crusade. He's just, we believe.
What do you mean? He's a patriot. No.
Yes, in a sense, he was rejected by them. he was rejected by the military and the Navy and stuff, and I love how his interaction at the jail scene, interrogation scene between him and Denzel Washington, both of them playing off each other.
Yeah.
Like his, and people who say he's a one-dimensional thing, I don't care. To me, that's not a negative. If you play a good character, no matter what movie you're playing in, even if it's the same type of character, you are a great supporting actor, because sometimes movies need that. A guy who's great at playing certain types of roles. That's Morgan Freeman would be a stereotype of actor. You think about it.
Yep.
So, man, some people say that, but I can't believe you've never seen Frequency. That is another good movie. I mean,
I know it is. It's just one that I know of it. Didn't see it, at the time, and was too busy.
I saw the show. I never saw the movie.
Oh, you saw the show? Ooh, I feel so ready.
The thing with Caviezel is that his character, like I say, is not on the screen a lot, and of course he's the bad guy, so to speak. He gives his usual speech, but if you listen to it carefully with what he's saying, and you consider the way the military might be viewed by some people today, you go, well, it was convenient for everybody, like, in the 80s to 90s to say that all the people involved in terrorist acts against the United States, whether it's Timothy McVeigh or down in Texas with the Waco Ranch thing, Ruby Ridge and everything else goes on, that, the FBI's, the great people, and they've saved lives and this and that too. And you start to understand the whole Patriots argument from a different angle. And this is not to support or condone any acts of violence against government or country or people, because what he did here is a very bad thing. But it's just weird to sit there and say that, in today's current climate, anybody would look at our military and go, yeah, we're afraid of you. Because, if we wanted to put our heads together in one day, we'd stop anybody. But whether or not you would actually do it is a whole nother thing. And Caviezel, again, I don't want to diminish him, whether people love him or hate him for his religious beliefs. He does come across as very righteous in here, and it's just different and more menacing than your usual goofy ex-con wannabe, lazy writing type of person, white supremacist role in here. He's just creepy. He believes what he says, and he has that conviction in his delivery that makes him so righteous in it too. And you're right. In that scene with Denzel, he doesn't shrink. He just sits there and explains it to him, and it's great chemistry back and forth. And a part of me goes, this is that less is more approach. More Caviezel in here, it would have taken away from what the movie was, which is supposed to be, to me, kind of like a romance movie, honestly, not even an action film too. But Caviezel is just excellent in it too, and he's believable. It's probably against type compared to everything else that he's done, although you could argue Person of Interest is okay too. But I don't think Caviezel would make that movie now today.
I would just say he was a great baseball player in the Wonder Years. Is Bobby Riddle.
Oh, he played basketball up there in Spokane.
Basketball or something like that, yeah. I was looking it up. I was like, yeah, that's where he got to start back, 92. But Jim Caviezel's not the only good actor in here too. Pixel is, I'm sure you noticed one in here that was working at the computer he was the one that was watching the girl, and he had yelled at him.
Oh, Foggy Nelson, yeah.
Yes, Foggy Nelson's in this.
I saw Foggy Nelson.
Daredevil. The other character that's in here too, I liked, is he's played by Adam Goldberg. He's the main scientist. And I gotta say, I've never really liked the guy in the roles. He was quirky even when he was on Friends. I think he was dating Phoebe. But I thought this role actually fit him. He was finally playing what he's supposed to be, a nerd. And that, I mean, nothing against the guy's looks, but he doesn't come off as manly. He comes off as geeky. Comes off as the guy who's, he's exceptionally smart, but has horrible social skills.
Yeah.
So I thought he was really good in this. And I even how he jokes, when he's sending Denzel Washington back, Yeah.
So ultimately what happens in the third act is Denzel basically wants to go back in time to try to save this girl, and the big argument is that she's already dead. We've got a corpse in there you looked at, and then he says, what's, is that true? Is she, what's alive? And they kind of almost stop before they have that conversation. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. What does that being mean? And but the point is these people have been really good with each other and worked really hard. It's basically, Val Kilmer has the great line where he looks at the guy and he says, just turn the lights off. when you leave. And he walks out. You know, there's no big speech, there's no big comment, there's no big, I can't believe you're doing this. No admonishing of anybody or wagging their finger at him, you know, shaking a stick sort of thing. They're like, yeah, fine by me. It's what he wants to do. We'll let him do it. I really love that about it. And so since we've already had the discussion about timelines of what happens, and like I say, they even draw it out for you and different people take turns explaining it and they slow down when they're doing it. It's not like they're talking down to you. You go, okay, he's going to go back. And I don't want to reveal the tons of clues there are, but as the movie unfolds in the third act, when you see him chasing down
Everything-
the bomber,
Everything that makes sense before is now making sense, which is really cool.
and it makes you go, oh my God, all this happened in the beginning, because you're like, oh, it's just a routine detective thing. Here's this, here's that, here's whatever. Here's him looking in her room. Here's this. He did notice, and I will say this because it's not a big thing, that things start to get weird, and you hear that weird music when he's checking out her apartment early in the movie. And on a refrigerator, those little kids' letters, you know, that are spelled out.
Yeah.
You can save her, and it's like, and you just kind of like looking at her or whatever.
The gauze, all that stuff, the water.
Yeah. Yes. It's so good. It's so good. And
there were some other side characters I didn't recognize because of how old this movie is.
mhm.
Ella Fanning was in here too. I'm pretty sure it was the little girl that she's the one that dropped the
Oh, the doll.
doll.
Yep.
And then because the guy he's in charge of the scene, the agent, the one that tells him like he tells Denzel to drop it, she's dead. We solved the case.
Yep.
Bruce Greenwood. He's been working for DC lately. He's been doing the voice acting for Batman in the animated movies.
Okay.
So he's another guy. It's just more people just popping up here. Like you said, and it doesn't really take away from the film because when you're watching this and like you don't really notice these people, and doesn't like Val Kilmer. That's the thing is like he's hardly in this, but I'm like it took me a minute to figure out. Oh, that actually is him because he's not playing a normal character he normally is. He's usually playing a leading role, and Denzel just outshines him.
Yeah,
So
and to your point, when someone like a Val Kilmer's in there, it's very easy to think that depending on how it's directed, written, or edited, that this person can come across as stealing the scene or trying to or whatever. But Val keeps it very low key and subdued, and he knows he's not the star of the scene, so his job is to set up Denzel, and that's what he does. And he sets up his team too as well. He comes across as a warm human being, a boss you'd like to work for that knows his business, that's not a complete pushover either. That's a delicate line to play, especially for a government agent.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, for those in case you're wondering, this movie is available for free over on Tubi TV.
Yes,
That's where I watched it. It does have commercials, but if you have an ad blocker installed in your browser, you can just skip all those commercials. Go ahead.
Obviously, not spoiling anything. I am just
Better
saying
not.
this movie is ultimately satisfying. I think I'm going to go ahead and say that. That is what this is. It is satisfying, and I am glad that I watched it.
Instead of Macbeth.
No, I already watched Macbeth, and it's good too. It's just different.
I think there's watch this film start to finish, and it's because of the music. There's a lot of sadness to it.
Yeah, but the orchestra they use in this, so when the high suspense, it raises up the pitch of the soundtrack, so that so you hear the violins or whatever, everything goes higher and higher, hit the suspense. Yep. They always do in older movies.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of what's missing from some of these newer movies, the suspense stuff.
Well, orchestras in general were used to score a lot.
Oh, and it always, even the TV shows, it always made it so much better. So
yeah, think of the T.J. Hooker thing. Without that and William Shatner running, you wouldn't have a show. No matter how much Adrian Smed's hot body would be in there, it doesn't matter. And then here
I don't know
get
who
to see
T.J. is, and I don't talk to hookers. I'm sorry.
So anyway, I'm just throwing that in. Now, here's what I'll say is for finishing up here on Deja Vu. It's very watchable film. You're not going to get any low things from Denzel. He's not overacting at all. You get a lot of your classic Denzel isms in here, which is totally great. Great supporting cast, like we've mentioned. Like I said, there's a lot of sadness to it. There's a romantic element to it, and the old school definition of romance isn't man woman bumping uglies or anything like that, or making eyes at each other. It just has this feel of timelessness to it, and I think that's intentional with the way the ending occurs. And all I remember is this is the movie that put me over the top with Denzel, because the whole sappy music's playing or like that, and somebody says to him or something like that, "What if I had to tell you the most important thing in the whole world and you would never believe me? What would you do?" And he'd go, "I try." And you're like, "Damn it, how do you deliver it like that, Denzel? It's so damn good," And that's just where talent takes over. You've got charisma, you've got it, you have your presence. And I will say this to kind of counteract what Pixel says, who says it's a satisfying film. I'm satisfied with the experience of watching it. The ending, I will say, maybe it's a little bit bittersweet. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, and it's one of those movies that you just curl up and you find yourself getting into, because it's almost a slow movie and deliberate. Like, I don't think the action is enough that's going to wake you up or anything, and there's not a lot of the action sequences in there, but it's still done very well. And the CGI in here, the explosion is terrific at the beginning, and they do not shy away from the gruesomeness of what it would actually appear to be. In other words, they just have a quick explosion and then they go to the investigation. They let the bodies hit the water and the cars and everything else there too, and you just wonder how this guy is going to figure things out at the end, seeing as how he goes back in time a couple of days to try to stop things. But it's satisfying in that you understand what they were trying to do and how it worked, and the very last 30 seconds, minute of the movie that sums it all up, you're like, okay, I get it. So I'll agree and say it's satisfying too. But damn, it's a good film, and I hadn't seen it since it came out in theaters. I'm glad we watched it here. Let's go around for our final thoughts. RDV?
Final thoughts. This has a great supporting cast. Paula Patton, I always forget her name, but she's been in a couple different movies. She's in Ghost Protocol. Tom Cruise was in there as well.
Yep.
So she's still around doing some acting stuff. I said, a simple plot, great performance from Denzel, and like I said, there's nothing in here throwing about race or any of that stuff you'd be taught it today with all the crap in politics. It's just a great movie. Actually, I can't. Well, actually, I don't want to say great, because, to me, I'd say it's way above average. It's good Denzel. But because obviously when Denzel does a movie, he does it 100%. So that's what I like about this too, and it doesn't really focus on one thing for too long. It keeps moving. It's a fast paced movie, or at least moderate pace, and it just takes into consideration, like, hey, just take a simple plot, let's keep it moving, and just do our best. I'm not sure if Denzel did all his stunts and stuff. Obviously, the car scene was probably filmed in a pool. At the
He
end,
played college ball too, I believe, Denzel. So we have two ball players in here.
And just like every Denzel movie, if you're a fan of Denzel, ladies, you get to see him with a shirt off. It's like every movie. It's like well,
this is his dad bod phase that he's in. So I don't know what phase he'd be in right now. I have no problem with it.
Well, he's in grandpa phase.
Listen, when he gets in the machine and he's told that you keep your underwear on and he keeps his shirt on, that's deliberate.
Of course, because you get to see him later. That's why they like that. It's a tease for the ladies.
Sure.
That's what it is.
Pixel,
final thoughts? Go ahead, Pixel.
My final thoughts. It's a solid film. It has great concepts, great acting, and like I said, it's overall satisfying. So you should definitely check it out if you get the chance.
Yeah. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Deja Vu. It's not the Yngwie Malmsteen song, which has an incredible guitar solo in it. It's the Denzel film that we're talking about here. It's fantastic too. And if you haven't listened or watched either, I recommend both. We'll see what we're gonna watch and talk about next week. I have a strong feeling of what it might be, but we'll make that official decision here shortly. But for next week, remember, 6 o'clock live Eastern time, we'll be continuing our Prisoner television show review. We'll be doing episode 3, Professor Pixel and I. Then RDV and Pixel will be joining us at 7 o'clock for the movie of the week. And then Tuesday night, we'll be coming up with something action-packed that RDV and I are going to helm and hit you with really, really hard between the eyes, just like Rainbow for the music lovers out there, the old school ones too. So for Professor Pixel, RDV, everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, thanks for watching. And for Professor Pixel and RDV and everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, thanks for watching. Good night.
Be seeing you.
Stay extreme. Good night.